All right, yeah, this one takes some time. So don't rush it. Let the ideas stack. Because what you're watching right now isn't just a bad news cycle or another political scandal flashing across the screen. It's a system revealing itself under pressure, and systems, when stressed, don't lie very well. They expose priorities. They expose incentives. They expose fear. Let's start at the exact moment everything goes sideways. Friday morning, uh, 30 days after the Epstein Files Transparency Act became law, the clock hit zero. This isn't vague. It's not symbolic. It's not aspirational language. It's mechanical. 30 days means 30 days. And on that morning, Donald Trump's administration admits out loud on camera that they are not complying, not partially complying, not struggling with logistics, violating. Instead of releasing all of the Epstein-related files, as the law requires, they announce they'll release a fraction, maybe 100,000 documents, maybe a few 100,000. And then sometime later, weeks or months down the line, maybe more, that delay is the violation. This matters because transparency laws aren't suggestions. They're written specifically to prevent exactly this kind of behavior. You don't get to stagger disclosures when the entire purpose of the law is to stop selective release, narrative control, and quiet redactions. The moment you introduce time, you introduce manipulation, and they knew that. Nobody in that room misunderstood the statute. Nobody accidentally misread all as some. This wasn't confusion. This was choice. And here's the thing people miss when they react emotionally instead of analytically. You don't judge power by what it says it wants. You judge power by what it's willing to risk. Trump's administration was willing to risk openly violating a federal transparency law. That tells you the alternative was worse for them. So ask the obvious question, worse how? To understand that, you have to look at who is delivering the message. Todd Blanche, Trump's number 2 at the Department of Justice, former personal criminal defense attorney for Donald Trump, the same lawyer who defended him in the case where Trump was convicted on more than 30 felony counts, the same lawyer who then gets elevated into a position overseeing compliance with the law directly affecting Trump. That's not a coincidence. That's alignment. Blanche isn't just a bureaucrat reading a memo. He's a loyalist placed at a choke point. And choke points matter. In engineering, in networks, in politics, whoever controls the bottleneck controls the flow. And Blanche also happens to be the official who interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell in federal custody. Maxwell, who was convicted for her role in a child sex trafficking network connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Maxwell, who lied throughout that interview. And shortly after that interview, she's transferred from a maximum security facility to a minimum security camp in Texas. You don't need conspiracy theories here. You just need pattern recognition. So Blanche goes on record and says the administration will release several 100,000 documents today.
So yes, so today is the 30 days, and I expect that we're going to release several 100,000 documents today, and those documents will come in all different forms, photographs and other materials associated with all of the investigations into Mr. Epstein. And just so everybody appreciates, President Trump has said for years that he wants full transparency, and he wants the Department of Justice to release everything that we can with respect to this investigation. And
that line isn't meant to convince skeptics. It's meant to create plausible deniability for supporters. It's not logic. It's insulation. But the law doesn't care about vibes. It cares about compliance. And when you actually read the Epstein Files Transparency Act, it's explicit. The Attorney General shall make publicly available all unclassified records, documents, communications, and investigative materials related to Epstein and his network, searchable, downloadable. Within 30 days, no carve-outs, no rolling releases, no, trust us, more later. So when the administration says they'll comply eventually, they're admitting non-compliance now. That's why this moment matters. Because it tells you something else. This delay wasn't improvised. It was prepared. We already know that at least 1,000 FBI and DOJ personnel were reassigned to work on Epstein file redactions. 1,000, many pulled from national security roles. That alone should raise alarms. National security staff don't get reassigned en masse unless something is considered extremely sensitive. And this wasn't a short sprint. Between January and July, FBI personnel logged more than 4,700 hours of overtime just related to Epstein file work. That's overtime only, not total labor. In March alone, nearly $1 million in overtime was logged over a 5-day period. When you model that out realistically, you're looking at tens of thousands of total hours spent reviewing, scrubbing, and redacting documents. And 70% of that activity clustered in March. Why March? Because that's when it became clear the law would pass. That's when the clock started ticking. That's when preparation began in earnest. So by the time Friday morning arrives, you're not watching a scramble. You're watching the final stage of a plan. And that plan clearly assumed delay. Which brings us to motive. What are you protecting that's worth violating federal law in plain sight? The obvious answer is names, connections, context, timelines, not just who appears in documents, but how often, in what capacity, and in proximity to whom. Epstein wasn't a random criminal. He was a node, a connector. His value to powerful people wasn't secrecy. It was access. And access leaves trails. This is why partial release is worse than no release. Partial release allows narrative engineering. You can dump a massive volume of documents and still hide the most damaging pieces. You can overwhelm the public while carefully omitting what matters most. That's not transparency. That's obfuscation by scale. At the same time, the administration is running a parallel narrative about the economy. Best ever, strongest in history, miracle turnaround. And again, you don't judge by slogans. You judge by data. Consumer sentiment from the University of Michigan drops to 50.4, lowest reading on record going back to the 1,970 seconds. People feel worse about their economic future now than during oil shocks, recessions, and financial crises. That's not noise. That's signal. People can't afford groceries, rent, housing, healthcare. They're working and still barely surviving. And instead of addressing that reality, the administration insists the numbers are great and accuses critics of negativity. That disconnect creates psychological pressure. When lived experience and official messaging diverge too far, trust collapses. And when trust collapses, institutions start relying on force, distraction, and spectacle. You see that in media behavior too. Weak economic data gets spun as good news because markets might benefit. Bad news for workers becomes good news for asset holders. That tells you who the messaging is for. Then there's labor policy. Unemployment takes up to a 4-year high, and the labor secretary frames it as positive.
The latest jobs report showed the unemployment rate going up to 4.6%. That's a 4-year high. You must be disappointed by that. Do you trust the numbers?
Well, when I look at the numbers, what I think about is that we saw a solid jobs report, 64,000 new jobs. The president has created more private sector jobs than we have seen in really a long time, and certainly not under the Biden administration, where almost 700,000 jobs have been in the private sector. Certainly, we have seen the federal jobs go down, which is what the president promised that he would do. You know, we're going to be in North Carolina tonight. I'll be with the president talking about, to the American people, how we're going to protect the American economy and the American jobs. So with more people searching for jobs, the unemployment rate can tick up because that means more people are getting off the sideline and finally wanting to be part of the American economy and this workforce. And at the Department of Labor, we want to stay focused on understanding exactly where we need to send those dollars to make sure that everybody has the opportunity at the American dream.
That was an interesting diplomatic move, I'd say, to see a 4-year high for unemployment is actually kind of beneficial and good news. Madam Secretary, I'm being facetious, but I don't mean it. I'll see you all very soon, I hope, and Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to you as well, Stuart.
Sure thing.
Words don't change physics. You can't spin scarcity into abundance. At the same time, federal officials talk openly about seizing land in California and transferring it to military control.
We have an opportunity to take a strip of land right along the border, transfer it to the military for a 3-year period, to which then if someone crosses into our country and steps on that, they're stepping on a military installation. That gives our troops that are down there working to secure that border more authorities about detaining people if they step on that land. It helps improve the security. We've done this already early in this Trump administration in New Mexico along a strip that ran across most of New Mexico. Now doing it in Southern California near the Pacific, because this is obviously an area of high traffic. When I was governor, we had troops stationed in this area, National Guard, helping out the federal government on the border. I've been down there myself as governor just over a year ago and saw, again, the tremendous gaps that we have in security that are there. Of course, now under President Trump, the border is secure. This is one step to make it even more secure.
Mr. Secretary.
That's what stress looks like. Systems default to control when legitimacy weakens. And while all of this is happening, Donald Trump personally benefits financially. Trump Media announces a multi-billion-dollar merger with a fusion technology company. A social media company hemorrhaging cash suddenly merges with advanced energy tech. The stock surges. Billions in paper value appear. That's not innovation. That's financial alchemy enabled by proximity to power. If laws can be violated openly when they threaten power, then the question isn't whether transparency exists. It's who it's for. So don't let this blur into background noise. Stay engaged. Share the information. Follow the data. Demand full compliance. And yeah, if you care about understanding how systems actually behave under stress, stick around. Subscribe. Keep watching. Because accountability only exists when people refuse to look away.